getting a little bit better with a little bit better, not by much. If it is Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern time, that can mean just one thing. It's time for the goRIA live stream. And we have with us today, as always, a special guest. I realize after listening to a few of these, I always say it's a special guest, but I do mean it each time. It's a really special guest. John Stadtmueller.
You got it. You nailed it.
Who is actually the founder of it. Yeah, I've been practicing that.
You nailed it.
Stadtmueller. And he is the founder of GAFF. And GAFF stands for Good Advisors Finish First. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chuck. Really appreciate it.
You bet. So we're going to get into a conversation about advisor community in just a moment. But first, a couple of housekeeping matters, a couple of announcements. So investment news, we are going to have our first RIA Summit of the year in person, New York City on April 16th. And I'm going to have the pleasure and privilege of being the chairperson for that. So if you're able to get yourself to New York City on, let me check my date, April 16th, it's going to be a full day summit in Manhattan, all kinds of great content, great guests, and everything you would want to know about the RIA space. So I would really encourage you to join us for that if you can. And then the other one, and this is not even out yet officially, but just amongst us, I'll share this with you. We're have the first RIA virtual summit of the year, and that date is going to be June 13th. So that's going to be virtual, right? So that way, no matter where you are, it's easy to attend, and it's going to be a half-a-day summit, laser focused on all things that you would want to know about going RIA. So stay tuned for that. And I was remiss, there is a registration fee for that, but if you use the promo code CHUCK25, you'll get 25% off. And the virtual event on June 13th is absolutely free. Okay. And of course, you can always check out all this information on www.goria.com. Okay. Housekeeping aside, is who can you trust, right? When you're looking to get information about the space, and I'm talking about the investment space. It could be the RIA space, which is kind of our forte. It could be the broker-dealer space. It could be the hybrid space. Where can you go? Well, there are a lot of resources. goRIA.com, of course, is one of those. But I really think, joking aside, and one of the best ways to get information about anything is to talk with your peers. And I brought this up a number of times before, the FPA, the Financial Planning Association. I'm a board member of that here in Connecticut. And I think that's a great resource to interact with fellow advisors. But there's other shows in town, other games in town, and GAFF is one of those. And that's a great be able to virtually connect with other advisors and ask other advisors, how do you do this? What do you think about that? So having said all that as some framework, John, fill in the blanks. What is GAFF all about, and how are you seeing that helping other advisors connect with each other to get the information they need?
Appreciate that lead in, Chuck. So real quick background on myself. I've been an advisor, wholesaler, broker-dealer, back office for the last 20 years. And in the last couple, went on this quest, this cause, good advisors finish first. And a big part of where that term came from, or that phrase came from, is that the industry historically, it just seems like we're always on the defensive, always having to apologize for fees, having to apologize for all the bad, all the negative to John Q. Public. Good advisors finish first is trying to turn that on its head and say, let's focus on the good. Let's turn the lights on. Let's be transparent. Let's be open, collaborate with one another, and let's focus on the good. And we talk about turning the lights on indiscriminately, which means it's not our place to say what's good. It's ultimately up to the end client. That's who's going to determine what a good financial advisor is, what good advice is. So that's where that term or that phrase came from. What we're trying to do in the makeup of what this is all about really started in my roles at broker-dealer, back office, wholesaler, covering advisors, where I'd get a lot of the same questions. John, what's that guy doing down the street? Do you know a book of business for sale? Do you know a junior advisor looking for a home? Best practices. You're just trying to get all this information. And I keep coming back to advisors. I'm like, I can give you an answer. I can talk about what other advisors are doing, but I'm going to give you a biased answer. I'm employed by an enterprise, by someone else. Right. The answer is going to be based on what is best for my role in that enterprise. Where can we generate the most sales? And so what really happened is, why don't you just go right to the horse's mouth? And again, Chuck, I appreciate your lead in talking about the importance and the value of connecting with peers. why don't we create a system, a means for advisors just to connect directly with one another, move out the middleman, let advisors connect and collaborate. And one of the challenges in that, and as you mentioned, there's FPA, there's other organizations, there's great communities out there and great ways for advisors to collaborate. The challenge is with some of the things, and where I really saw an opportunity with Good Advisors Finish First, is that a lot of the things that take place, it's not necessarily efficient. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of competing interests. So what if we were to take all of that away and remove any incentive for providing BS and all these noise generating things, and provide a platform for advisors to connect and collaborate directly with one another? And as you mentioned, this happens virtually. Things happen. So in the Good Advisors Finish First community, we have a digital community for advisors to connect and collaborate. But that's really just the start of conversations where the rubber meets the road and where advisors are really getting the most value is when they connect with one another directly. So, understand, get to know an advisor a little bit virtually, but then I'm going to pick up the phone and talk with that advisor individually, one-on-one. That's really where you get the most value. And that's, as we all know, that's where what advisors are looking for. And just real quick, another thing that has been challenging and what I saw over my tenure, over the different roles that I held, is that there's a lot of legacy mentality of let's keep these advisors separate and distinct. As you know, Chuck,
Mhm.
broker dealer world, there's different payouts on different products. Well, we can't let those advisors at firm A know what the payout is at firm B. God forbid.
Mhm.
It's like, well, could it be possible for those advisors to connect at a bar over a beer and understand what's available at both firms? And so this whole transparency idea is, why are we trying to preclude advisors from connecting, or trying to put up these artificial walls that really can't even exist anymore in this digital age? Whether we want it to be or not, the advisors are going to find this information. So let's provide an opportunity, a means and mechanism for advisors to collaborate directly. That's what Good Advisors Finish First is all about.
I think that's a really good point. And we were talking about this a little bit off. And I love conferences, and I think conferences are very valuable. And especially for someone like myself, I came out of the IBD world, and you tend to be your own little island, right? Because
Yeah.
we were a small shop, and now we're a bit larger, so we have kind of a bit of our own little island. But still, the more interaction, the better. So you go to these conferences and you listen to them, usually quite good and informative. But sometimes they're done by sponsors, and you got to really peel away like what's the bias and the unbiased. But the one thing I love the most about the conferences, or going to conferences, and I call that the muffin top, right? For you Seinfeld fans out there, like the best part is actually not the presentations necessarily, but it's the time in between. It's those coffees in between, the beers in between those presentations, or at least the beers probably should be after the presentations, I suppose. But you know what I'm saying? It's like those social interactions. And I remember the first time I went to an FPA event, and I was shocked, like really shocked, on how open these about sharing
Yeah.
their secrets of success. I was like, wow, I can't believe these people are sharing this stuff. This is great. I'll share some stuff too. And it was like great interaction. And to your point, what you've done with GAFF, and I do truly mean this, it's like you've plucked off that muffin top and you have just that social interaction, and that more than just talking sporting events and stuff, like that peer to peer. And you really get the sense that you're getting the straight poop, as opposed to kind of hearing information for sure that's accurate-ish, but still through the lens of what that wholesaler is trying to sell. Can you speak to that a little bit, and what kind of feedback you're getting from other GAFF members?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to steal the muffin top. I like that analogy. That's
Please.
great. So, in my most recent role prior to launching this community, I was a regional representative for LPL Financial. And so we would go to these conferences exactly like you're talking about. You go, great valuable content, great information, but what you'd continuously hear is the most valuable conversations were over lunch at a table. And so in Minnesota here, there was a group of advisors at every LPL conference, and they would have a Minnesota lunch table. They put a little flag up on the table. They'd all meet at the round table, and it just every single time, that was the most valuable part of the conference. They're all in Minnesota. They could get together here, but it was an opportunity that they basically we're in this confined space. They're watching these presentations and having these conversations, and time after time after time, you just hear that's the most valuable part of this meeting. Like you said, it's over lunch, it's over a beer, over coffee, and so that is exactly what we're trying to do is replicate that and bring that out at scale. Can we do that in a broad arena, a broad community where we're inviting everyone? We want advisors that are independent RAs, broker dealer advisors, captive advisors. We want everyone to start off in this community to share and collaborate and connect. But ultimately, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, the most valuable conversations end up being in these small groups, maybe even all the way down to one-on-one. And so everything needs to start in this broad sphere, this broad environment, but then it does need to whittle down to, here's an advisor who's got a practice very similar to mine, and I want to bounce some ideas off and get to know this advisor, somebody I trust. And one other thing I'll say that I continuously I'm floored about, and you talked about this, is how open advisors are and willing to share.
Yeah.
It's not everyone, right?
No.
There are scenarios, we all know this. There's examples and scenarios where advisors may not be willing to share, or they're looking, what's in it for me? Why am I willing to share? But time after time, I'm still pleasantly surprised, amazed. It's better than I could have imagined in terms of how much advisors are willing to share. Just last week, we had an advisor run an event, and I called him up afterwards. I'm like, man, would you mind sharing your templates? He's like, yeah, here's an email. Here's the 6 templates I use for my office, my client communications, my scripting, and just, here, you could share this with all the other advisors in the community. So it's tremendous to see that. And that's really what we talk about. It's not just delivering value, it's efficiently delivering value. If we provide that opportunity, that mechanism for advisors to connect directly with one another, cut out the noise and BS, in a lot of cases, the cream will rise to the top, and the advisors who are willing to share will.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it for today. And another bit of housekeeping, I can mention that John was kind enough to invite me to come on onto GAFF for his live stream, which will be next Wednesday, right?
Next Wednesday, noon Eastern. Yep.
Noon Eastern. So we'll do that noon Eastern, and I can do my live stream a few hours after that. And I'll be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is portfolio group rebalancing versus account level. And what I'm really looking forward to is getting feedback from the other advisors, right? Who uses this? Who doesn't use it? If you don't use it, why not? What am I missing? And collaborative sounding board. And perhaps, John, if you would be kind enough to put the link to that inside the comments to this particular event, we'll share that as well, and hopefully get the word out. But I would love to get as many advisors to that as possible and really hear what everyone has to think about portfolio group asset management. And for those of you that have not yet checked out GAFF, it'll be a good taste of what it's all about and what it's like to have an online peer-to-peer sharing environment. So with that, and on that note, John, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Yeah, looking forward to next week, Chuck. There's so many topics we can get into. This is just one of many, and I'm really excited to get into this one. Thank you so much for stepping up for that one.
Absolutely, and thanks for joining us, Symbiotic Thing already. All right, so on behalf of goRIA, fueled by investment news, I'm Chuck Vela, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 3 o'clock for this live stream, and perhaps next Wednesday at noon Eastern for the live stream I'll be doing with John on GAFF. Till then, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.